Welcome to another episode of the Financial Armor Show with Brad Cooper as your host. I'm the president of Cooper Financial. And as always, I want to welcome my amazing co-host, Tony Shore. How you doing today, Tony?
I'm doing great, Brad. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited
Yes.
about this one. We were talking a lot about it before the show. There's a lot of changes going on that people need to know about for next year, especially potential retirees and people who are in retirement. But before we get to that, I wanted to tell you I have been fantastic. Actually, got to go
Great.
out with my wife on a date night, just the two of us. And it's the first time
Good
we've
for
done that
you.
in a long time. Usually, lately, when we get together, we invite, my son and his wife or one of our two college kids. So we haven't gone out on a date night, Brad, in a long time with just the two of us, where it hasn't been, we haven't
Wow.
went with another couple so that was really nice. Got to do that last weekend. And this weekend, guess what I'm doing?
Hopefully the same. 2
Oh,
weeks in a row?
no, I'm actually going to the
Okay.
Vikings game at US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis with a friend of mine.
Oh
So
my gosh. I was going to say even better, but I better not say
no,
that.
no,
I'm
we
sitting
don't say
a second close
yeah.
to the
If
to
Sarah
your
is
wife and date
listening,
nights.
no, absolutely not. Not better. Better in one sense, not better in another. I would
Oh,
rather be going with her, but I'm going with my friend Joe Lamming, who got the tickets through his company. So
oh, how
I'm excited.
fun.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. But I don't know if in Arizona we're even talking about professional football right now, are
You
we?
know what? Go Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh no.
Oh,
Yeah.
I usually, being from Missouri, I'll normally, if the Chiefs are winning, which they have the last several years, I'm a Chiefs fan. If the Cardinals switch around and start playing well, I'm a Cardinals fan. But, one thing it just made me think, Tony, is you're sharing with date night, which, that's amazing. I think
Yeah.
as a married couple, we all should be doing that much, much
Yes.
more, including myself. But it reminds me of a story I read. The husband was excited and told his wife, "We're going somewhere you have not been in a long time this coming Friday night." So she got excited, thinking about what she was going to wear. And finally, "You got to tell me, honey, where are we going?" "Well, I'm going to take you to the kitchen, honey, and reintroduce you to the stove, the refrigerator, the
Oh
pots and
no.
pans."
Oh no. Oh no.
Appa-
So
Apparently, this particular wife doesn't cook at all, nor the husband, so they don't spend too much time in the kitchen. So
yeah, and right now that man is still sleeping in his garage.
I'm sure he is. Oh,
That's not good.
oh, one last quick story before we jump into what's important in financial matters. It reminds me of a story I just heard recently from Mike Huckabee, former governor of Arkansas.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And he uh, he has a show on TV, and he is a big advocate and a pet lover, especially dogs. And he was talking one evening about a dog being a man's best friend. It's
Mm.
just amazing how much dogs love men. He said, "If you don't believe me, let me put you to a test and have you do this. When it's about 100 degrees outside, lock your wife in the trunk and lock your dog in the trunk. Come back an hour later, open the trunk, and you'll see who's excited to see you and who's excited to kill you."
Oh no, that's terrible. Oh, Huckabee told that story.
Oh, he did.
Oh,
But
is
it's
he still
true.
married? Is he still married after telling that
I
story
think his
though? I
wife
mean,
was away from the show and did not hear that
yeah.
segment.
Yeah, hopefully
He
not.
would have been in trouble. But
Yeah,
anyway,
that's a bad one, but yeah, that's funny. I mean, yeah, dogs do love people. Oh, our dog just loves
oh
everyone.
yes.
I mean, it just any living being. So, that's good. Well, that's that's great. So, today, I know there are a couple of big changes. There's a big change coming in 2025 for Social Security.
Right.
There's changes to Medicare. Where do you want to begin today, Brad?
Let's talk about the upcoming change that's going to happen January 1st of 2025 with Social Security.
Okay.
And the title, Social Security will see modest, that's the key word, COLA rise in 2025.
Mm.
So just there's been numerous articles we've been receiving. One I just read recently: Social Security Administration announces a COLA increase for 2025 from CNBC article. And if you don't know by now, that big increase, Tony, is going to be 2.5%.
Hmm.
2.5%, which is better than zero.
Yeah, much better. We've had a couple of years with zero,
Oh,
in the
many
last
years,
10 years. Yeah. Yeah.
but not as good as 6, 7, or 8%, or even higher
No.
either.
No, we've had 5, 6, and even 8% recently. So, yeah.
And in the article, it talked about, if you take all the average retirees who's on Social Security, what would that average increase be? And that comes out to, on average, of about an extra $50 per month, $600 a year.
Okay. Okay. Not a lot, not a lot,
No.
but $50 a month in retirement is $50 a month. So I know that people talk about that. People might be planning on, but before you spend that money, before you plan on where you're going to spend that $50, you got to think about, the rising costs of just goods across the board, I guess.
Right. And the way inflation's been the last several years, even though statistics, the government says it's coming down. I mean, every time I'm at the grocery store, I'm just, reminded how expensive things are. And yes, $50 a month on average is better than nothing. But then here's a common follow-up question I get from a lot of people. Well, Brad, it's one thing to get an increase with Social Security, but how about my Part B Medicare premium? Is it going
Ah,
to stay the same? Which, by the way, in 2024, currently the average is $174.70 Part B that's deducted from your Social Security.
each
So
month.
each and every month.
Yep.
So from this article, from the research we have done, we're looking at, on average, maybe about $10 more per month, which would jump it up to closer to $185 per month.
Which
So,
does eat away at a bit of that, COLA increase on your Social Security, because typically the Medicare
right,
premiums come out of your Social Security check, and I know a lot of people realize that are already in retirement, hey, they give the cost of living adjustment, but sometimes it's completely eaten up, or a large portion is, by the Medicare increase, so it's kind of a wash, but it sounds like you're gonna have a positive still, you're gonna have a little more left over, right? Like 40 bucks
absolutely. And
a
here's the
month?
good news: take that extra $40, especially if you're up in Minnesota, which some crazy people still will be in January and February, not mentioning any names, Tony Shore. But if you're one of those candidates, take that $40 net that you're going to be making extra, take your significant other, your spouse, your whoever out to Starbucks and
Yeah,
spend that money on a couple cups of coffee
there
and
you go.
enjoy it for a
Yeah.
good maybe 30, 45 minutes. But
Get a nice
uh,
hot cup of, coffee or cocoa, that's for sure,
I
and
am
then bank the rest, right? Put the rest back into
right.
your, account, or save it, put it into your emergency fund, right?
Yes. And we find, Tony, a lot of our clients, and this is not the norm nationwide, because if you take the average nationwide retiree, it's sad as far as how many retirees are in poverty and just barely making means, you know, I guess, paying the bills and not running out of money by the end of each and every month. But
Right, right,
a lot of the people that we talk to, we advise, we help. Of course, they're not multi millionaires. They've done
right.
well, but a lot of times, well, Brad, we don't need this money. What should we do with that? And that's something I want to talk about. I just had this conversation last week. I was sitting down with some clients and just doing a review, which is one of my most favorite meetings, because normally about 100% of the time we're the bearer of good news as far as performance, protection, risk, and all the education we provide and the planning we do. But one of the biggest concerns that I'm hearing on a daily, if not weekly basis at least, is Brad, we're done well with our money. It's growing well. Risk, we're not taking a lot of risk, which we're happy with. Tax savings, which with the tax planning you and your CPA team have helped us with, we feel good about that. But there's one area that I believe we may be lacking. And what is that? Long-term care, unforeseen healthcare expenses. And I was just reminded, just yesterday, personally, talking to a family member, their mother-in-law is going into a nursing home.
Hmm.
$7,500 per month, and
Oh,
they're really stressing out about that amount, and that's in a small town, and that's below the national average of what the average person is spending. So I share that with you because here's the conversations, Tony, we're having with every person we sit down with. And when it comes to unforeseen healthcare expenses, long-term care, we're talking about other non-traditional strategies that I like to call them that will offer these benefits for, unforeseen healthcare expenses, long-term care, that you can use some of your money, Social Security, required minimum distributions to help fund. And what I love about it, Tony, is it will, over the years, accumulate, earn interest. If you never need care, great. The money will pass on to your estate. However, if you do need care, a lot of these strategies will pay out per month tax-free benefits for a period of 5 years.
wow. Wow. So, and that's like a hybrid policy, right? Or some type of
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You have to take into account these days long-term care. My mom, as you know, I've mentioned her on
Right.
the show. I'll mention this again, just to drive the point home, because this is what I'm dealing with my parents. My mom is in long-term care and has been for 2 years now, over 2 years,
Right.
and it's $11,000 a month right now because she needs
That is
everything.
crazy.
She needs full care, help with
Right.
everything. So, because of the Parkinson's, and now my dad is diagnosed with Parkinson's and he's in assisted living. And of course, that's money as well. And
Right.
as he needs to add more care onto that. So, you might want to look at, my wife and I are saying, hey, we need to get out of our split level home now that the kids are moved out and, look for one level. We want a home where we can age in place. And that's a popular thing, but you need to discuss these with a financial advisor before you make any moves. And you need to be prepared for healthcare costs in retirement. Like you said, $10 a month is $10 a month, and that's what it's going up this year. But you want to make sure you can cover. That's just the Medicare Part B premium, too, by the way.
Right.
There's also deductibles, co-pays, the drug plan, vision, hearing, dental. Healthcare costs in retirement can be quite expensive, and not to mention the long-term care you're talking about. So having a plan is so crucial, isn't it?
It is. And Tony, what I've found in our industry as a whole, the majority do not have these tough conversations with clients. And that's awfully disturbing. Last week, I spent over half the week in an amazing training, which I go to 2 or 3 times a year with Ed Slott. I know I mentioned Ed Slott's name in previous shows. Ed Slott's one of the top experts when it comes to taxes, tax advice, estate planning out of New York. And I was in training with him last week. And this is something he talked about, which ties into Social Security, taxes, but also he said, you need to be educating, you need to be advising your clients, which our industry has done a very, very poor job with, of letting them know about these hybrid products, these other strategies that offer these benefits. So when they do get to that point and need help, they'll have the resources to help pay for that and not drain their entire nest egg and future
Right.
inheritance for their kids.
Yeah, that's another thing. Your legacy, your estate planning, you want to make sure you do leave your loved ones in a good situation, which also needs to be part of the plan when you're looking at these things. And one way you're going to help yourself achieve that goal is maximizing your Social Security, staying
Right.
on top of what these changes mean for you, and working with a financial services professional like yourself, Brad.
Absolutely. And that's, one of the top things I would recommend with anyone, whether it's with Cooper Financial and us or anyone who covers these important topics, but maximizing your Social Security. I was in a visit meeting with a new person a couple weeks ago, and 63 years old was the age of the husband and the spouse, and they did a pretty good job as far as savings. They had a lot of IRA money, and which that's good and bad, because when you have a lot of IRA money, really you have a silent partner called the IRS, which basically you have to share a part of that with when you cash it in, because it's all taxable. But with that said, I got to the question of Social Security, you know, and talked about the planning. And they said, well, Brad, stop there. We already filed at 62.
Hmm.
And one was getting like $900 a month, the other $1,100 a month. They were never advised by a professional. They took the advice of a brother in law.
Mm.
And the impact there is now they're going to be stuck with those low benefits for the rest of their life and not be able to maximize their Social Security. And then on top of that, you're penalized by over 25% for filing early, and you're taxed. Now, if we look at doing any type of tax planning, they may be giving up half of that Social Security amount for the first 5 years until they reach full retirement age.
Hmm. Wow. So yeah, and you mentioned in there, I think my brother-in-law is probably the last person I would take financial advice from. But no
Thank
offense to my brother-in-laws, I have two of them, but but you know what I mean.
you.
It's just a lot of people do that though. They talk to their best buddy or their neighbor or their brother-in-law or father-in-law, or look at what their parents did. And you really have to look at your own situation and work with a financial professional who doesn't have any emotional attachment and is going to look at your specific needs, right?
Absolutely. It's not black and white. And there are
Right.
cases for people to file at 62, because I do have a few clients that did file at 62 with our advice. Here's the reason why: they hated their job, very stressful,
Yeah.
poor health. They verbalized to me, Brad, we'll be lucky if we're alive in 5 years. Our whole family's life expectancy has been 60 to 65 years of age. So there's an argument for that. But on the other hand, waiting till full retirement age, waiting till age 68, 69, 70, and it's different for everyone. And what's really neat and cool about this topic, Tony, is our team can prepare what's called a Social Security maximization report for you, that's personalized for you based on you, your age, your goals, your objectives. And that report will give you several options, because technically there's over thousands and thousands and thousands of filing options. And the number one source that most people still go to, in addition to their brother-in-law, is the Social Security office. And by
Yeah.
federal law, the Social Security office cannot give Social Security advice.
Yeah, they can tell you how to file, but
Right.
they can't tell you when is going to be the best time for you to file, or what spousal strategies you should use based on you and your spouse's history and finance and everything else. And that's where you need a second opinion on where you're at, or a first opinion for some folks out there. So if you're planning on retiring or in retirement, again, Brad, I want to encourage our listeners and viewers out there to pick up the phone and
Right.
give you a call. All they have to do is call you and your team there at Cooper Financial. The number is 888-390-5277. That's 888-390-5277. 5277. And they can also go to the financialarmorshow.com. It's just financialarmorshow.com. You don't need the. Just type in financialarmorshow.com and you'll go to the website, and they can click a link to your main site or fill out a contact form there, and somebody will get back with them. And I know you offer a no charge, no obligation consultation, right?
Yes, and that's the most enjoyable part, is just sitting down over a cup of coffee and just answering
Yeah.
your questions and advising you on all the resources and information out there for this. You know, one thing I was just thinking of, Tony, as we're, talking, the topic is Social Security, and we're talking about Social Security benefits. This just reminded me, I had a meeting with, now he's a client, but years ago when I first sat down with this gentleman, he was very sharp. I mean, probably knew more about financial services and planning than most financial service professionals, but very humble. But I think at the time, Tony was about 67 years of age, but he shared with me his wife passed away, unfortunately, at 57. And
Wow.
which is sad. So he's been a widower for about 10 years at that point. And as we continue to talk, and I was gathering information, he shared with me he did file for Social Security benefits at full retirement age, which for him was like 66 years of age.
Hmm.
And so for the past year, but when I asked him this next question, the look I can just still see on his face. I said, "Did you file for spousal benefits at age 60 on your wife who passed away?" And he looked at me and said, "What are you talking about?" Because his wife passed away at age 60, he would have been able to receive benefits on her surviving spousal benefits. And over that 7-year period, that would have amounted to over $200,000 that he missed out on. Why? Because there's not a whole lot of financial service professionals talking and spending time
Yeah.
on this topic, which is so important. Um, most people know the basics. Yeah, the older you wait, the more you get, and it stops there. But that is very important. So that, number one, but also I want to share with you when it comes to Social Security planning and filing, and this is something that most of my industry will not bring up. Yes, they'll bring up, yes, if you wait, which a lot of times that's in your best interest to do, you will get more money. But also, you really got to take a look, and we talked about this last week a lot, the taxation on Social Security if you file early. Now, keep in mind, at full retirement age, you can make money and make unlimited money. However, the average American today is being taxed on their Social Security benefits. Up to 85% of their Social Security Social Security benefits are taxed. So, with that said, if you're thinking about doing tax planning and you file before full retirement age, there's going to be a huge impact on your Social Security benefits, in addition to a reduction of benefits for the first 5 to 6 years.
Wow. So you could make a really costly mistake if you're not working with a financial services professional from the way it sounds, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. And, people just don't know what they don't know. And
Right.
I've admitted this, especially everything that my wife has been through the last 3 years in the healthcare system. Thank God for Mayo Clinic, and thank God she's doing great today. But during the early months of kidney failure for her, we did not know what we didn't know. We didn't know what questions to ask. We got terrible advice years ago. But today, we do know, and we are getting the best of the best advice from several healthcare professionals, and that's what saved her life. So, no different than financial
Wow.
planning, not financial
Yeah.
services. And I realize This is what we do day in and day out. Now, if you're an engineer, if you're a doctor, a nurse, school teacher, police officer, that's your expertise. And I respect that. And I will listen because I don't know what I don't know. But don't put this to the side and ignore it or procrastinate. Take this head on and have these discussions with a financial service professional that will sit down and listen and care and provide you with more information than what you probably asked for when you came in. That's what you
Right.
want.
There you go. Yeah. Wow. Some tough stuff today, Brad, and some really important information for our listeners out there. And I love how you relate it to our listeners with real world issues and people you've dealt with along the way. Don't just take it for granted or, say, well, the conventional wisdom of the three people I talked to about Social Security said to do this. The majority of people file at either age 62 or 65, whether it's good for them or not. And some people end up leaving tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table when it comes to the Social Security. So get that report run and work with a financial professional, right? That's the bottom line.
Yes, and do not procrastinate. Do that
Yeah.
today and make that a priority because you could be leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table. And one
Mhm.
one thing that most people know, but I just want to remind you, let's say you make the wrong decision, you don't file in time, you don't maximize your Social Security. When you die, those benefits stop.
Yeah.
And if you're married, what the Social Security office is going to do, they're going to look at both you and your spouse, and whoever is the highest, the surviving spouse will get to keep. But the other Social Security check is gone. Even though
Yeah.
you paid into this your whole life, it's gone.
Right. They won't get both. The surviving spouse will only get one or the other. And so you want to make sure you maximize yours as much as possible. If you're going to, if your spouse, in case your spouse outlives you, you don't leave them with a smaller amount either. So I think that makes sense. So people need to be aware of this. Great points today, Brad. Before we go, let our listeners out there know how they can get a hold of you and set up that complimentary. There's no charge, there's no obligation to set up a consultation, correct?
That is correct, Tony. You can call us at 888-390-5277. That's toll free, 888-390-5277, or visit our site, financialarmorshow.com. Again, that's financialarmorshow.com. Type in any questions you have. That's one of the highlights of our weeks is responding to questions that our listeners have and giving you those answers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much,
Yeah.
Brad. Great to see you today and hang out this week once again with
Yes.
you. And I know we'll be back with more next week. Listeners, thanks for tuning in. That does it for today's episode of the Financial Armor Show with our host, Brad Cooper.
Thank you, Tony.